Good morning, good evening, everyone. This is Luda Kopikina with GAI Insights. Welcome to Daily AI News Review, where we rate articles essential, important, and optional, helping you navigate to the most important trends in the AI landscape. Today, I have John, Ankaj, Tim, and Paul, our regular wonderful crew, and we'll take you through 6 articles. The articles are on gaiinsights.com/articles. We're ready for the first article, Ankaj, please.
Sure, thanks, Luda. So the first one that we have for today comes from HBR, and it talks about forgetting what we know about search optimization. It says that we should optimize our brands for LLMs.
Yes, a topic that we've discussed many, many times, but this is a little deeper with an angle and a framework to think about it. What did you think about this, John?
Yeah, I was going to rate this thing essential. I think it's something every AI leader should know. We've been talking about this for some time, and our dear friend Pete Blackshaw, started a whole company around this, around BrandRank.ai. This notion of going from the search engines to the answer engines. Ankash, if you go down to the table, it talks about the difference among share of concept, share of model, share of voice, share of search. I think that's a nice way to to think about it. There's some so it's a relatively it's well researched. They did a big survey underneath this thing. It's from a professor at INSEAD and a couple folks from an ad company. I think it's essential that people understand the whole presence online. This focuses on customers. They don't talk about the fact that talent is also looking at these things. I think both your supply of talent and other suppliers, to you, as well as your customers, are now using these engines to do it. So I was going to rate it essential, and I think it's practical, useful, well-researched, articulate, and terse.
And has some good pointers at the end of what to do and what not to
Yeah,
do.
absolutely. I think this whole thing, it's great. It's great news for. I'm optimistic in the sense of, I think search engine optimization narrowed your content filter to narrowly. This points out the fact that the models like true applications, connections, reviews, implications. There's a nice little comparison of how Cadillac got kept its 100-year-old brand relevant by having a richer set of content and interactions with the brand as they promoted it. So I think it's essential.
Okay, Tim, an overwhelming essential from John. What did you think?
Yeah, I won't argue with it. It's I was between important and essential. It's a good article. They're talking their book a little bit. This is a group that has built a tool on this stuff, so you have to be a little careful. The other thing that I would encourage people to do is to remember how early it is, because go back in the Wayback Machine and look at Google in 2000, and it was pure search. It was completely utilitarian. It had nothing to do with sponsorship and advertising, and that's where we are, which is great. Okay, and not only is it utilitarian, but it's much more semantically powerful. So it's great right now. I think we're headed right down the, am I allowed to say, Cory Doctorow's shitification path, and we're going to end up there, and it's going to be very different. So I think it's right. This is going to be important. I'm kind of depressed about it because it's going to turn us into another search optimized, but in this case, answer optimized, whatever you call it. And people will do whatever they can, and the companies will do whatever they can to milk the revenue stream. So I just think be careful about the advice right now, because this is good advice for the current situation, but I think that situation will change.
Yeah, my problem with the Cory Doctorow and shitification thing, first of all, I hate that term, but the other thing is that, people want something for nothing. I mean, how much do you pay for Google? Nothing. Guess what? You're going to have to deal with advertisements. I mean, come on. It's ridiculous.
Tim, I did go the Wayback Machine.
All right. All right. Paul, what did you think?
This is from the Wayback Machine in 1998. So that's what Google was way back then. So,
Well,
yeah,
more importantly, when you typed in a search result, you just got search results.
correct.
And I agree, there has to be an economic model to make it work. I'm just not a fan of the one we currently use. I think there are lots of economic models. This model has benefits and trade-offs.
Yeah.
People don't want to pay for stuff.
So look at this great debate, right? So supports essential. Ankaj, essential?
Essential for me, Luda. I have a question for John. John, we discussed a paper recently from Anthropic where models have been leaking information to other models, right? And not directly, but very sort of in a manner which can't be identified. So, do you think someone who has been optimizing their content for LLMs from GPT, let's say 3.5 onwards, they have a better chance of this answer engine optimization compared to someone starting right now?
Yeah, that would be my guess. I think what's interesting is that when I look at the Anthropic thing, I think I was reminded of the work of Carl Jung about the collective unconscious. I mean, I think we're going to have, as we start using these models and they're part of the ongoing human dialogue, I think that there's going to be an unconscious set of biases and capabilities and influences that we're going to have to explore. And, back to a thing that Tim says often, I agree with, we're doing no research on the psychology of these models or whatever we're going to call it. And so, but yes, so many people out there saying first mover advantages don't work. It's total baloney. Carl Benz, invented the car, and, he did a fantastic job. Amgen invented birth control and they made a fortune on it. So first movers do win in markets. Just because there are some first movers who fumbled it, a lot of first movers who fumbled it, doesn't mean being a first mover isn't important. It's just not empirically correct, and it's a misnomer out there that only fast followers win. Not a misnomer. It's a point of ignorance that only fast followers win. So anyway. Yes.
Yeah, but you have to be careful because as we see, each model has its own little angle.
Yeah.
How you work with it, right? To get it aware of what's happening. So you even though I agree that the first movers would have an advantage, but you have to be careful not to get very deeply rooted into what you're doing and be very flexible in adjusting, I think, as you go forward.
Yeah, you have to lead. You have to lead and think. What a concept. That's what they tell you.
All right. Essential it is. Let's proceed, Ankash.
Luda, I'm just highlighting Vivek online was also voting for essential. So
Yeah.
And
Kevin agreeing that his customers are really, this is on the top of their mind to delve into. So, yeah, thank you. All right, let's proceed to the next one. Ankash.
Sure, Luda. So the next one comes from Meta and talks about personal superintelligence.
Yeah, but this is the letter from Mark Zuckerberg. What did you think about this, Tim?
I think this is optional. It's, this is what Mark Zuckerberg likes to write about. Again, we can have a long argument, John. I think this is just him talking his book. He's positioning. I don't know. Maybe he genuinely believes it. I don't know. But he's the open source guy, and he's positioning open source as the great savior. I think, as we were discussing before we got on here, it's irrelevant. I don't know what to do with it other than to say, okay, if you want a nice quick read, it's good, entertaining reading, but nothing more than that.
But it's actually interesting, Tim, in the middle of it someplace, he's saying that, yeah, open source is great, but not everything has to be open source. Kind of, I think, hedging his bets here a little bit. What did you think about this, John?
Yeah, he shouldn't have dropped out of Harvard. His facts are wrong. 90% of people didn't work in agriculture. About 70 to 80% did 200 years ago. But can we have a new category, optional with prejudice? Because like that.
I like it. Yeah.
This is. Oh my goodness! I mean, it makes me ill because he went to a couple schools I went to, and this level of thinking is so vapid And here's one of the wealthiest guys in the world,
Yes.
sitting on one of the most important platforms of the world, spewing pablemic bullshit, poorly reasoned, and whatever. So no, optional.
Now we know what John really thinks.
I was gonna say, well,
Other
first,
than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how did you enjoy the play?
well, Ankash, two things. One, we've never found a topic that John didn't have a strong opinion on, so that's the good news. I think the second thing is that isn't this the same guy who wrote an article just similar to this, talking about how the metaverse was going to be the whole future, and he renamed his entire company on it. So I think on the flip side, his earnings announcement this week was stunning. I mean, they're 45 billion. They're growing at 25%. They get 3.5 billion people in the world access their platform, and he's ripping talent out of Apple and OpenAI with massive Yankee-like things. So he is transforming stuff, and he's got the people to do it.
He's pretty ruthlessly doing it. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, he's at least as ruthless as Bill Gates was in his prime.
Yeah,
and Bill was pretty ruthless.
More, maybe even, I think. Yeah.
Okay. So Ankash, going optional. Okay with that?
Optional, Luda, but an interesting question that he hasn't been able to poach anyone from Thinking Labs or Anthropic. So what do these guys know at these two companies that they are not willing to take $1 billion offers?
Well, I think
so Anthropic is reportedly built a culture that not many people leave very deeply.
It's $100 million. You can build your own culture.
But I think that anybody who has a deep values-based organization is going to have a hard time working at Meta.
I will say that I have a certain close offspring who might or might not be employed by Anthropic, and who is said in no uncertain terms they would never work there, never work for Meta.
Yeah. Okay. Next one, please, Ankash.
Okay, the next one that we have comes from Mistral, and Mistral has launched Codestral 25.08 and a complete Mistral coding stack for enterprise.
Yeah, very comprehensive, but kind of a me too somewhat. What did you think about this, Ankash?
Yeah. So Luda, there are two parts to the announcement. One is they have updated the Codestral model, which is a smaller part, but the next part is where they introduce the Mistral coding stack, right? So they have their Codestral model, which generates code. They have Devstral, which acts as an orchestration engine. Then they have a Codestral embed, which indexes your repositories and helps in semantic search. And they help organization build a coding platform in on-premise environment, or let's say VPC, which is very different from what all the coding agents are doing right now. So from that perspective, I was important on this news.
Okay, so important from Ankash. What did you think about this, Tim?
Yeah, I was sort of there, maybe borderline optional. It's I haven't run CI/CD, not to get too geeky, in several years. So the points they make are right if they're correct, but I can't tell you what the other players have done. Certainly the players like Cursor and the others are all SaaS players. And that is a problem if you're a large enterprise running your internal, what are called continuous integration, continuous development tools. You cannot necessarily just automatically go out to a SaaS tool for your code and stuff. If you're a bank, they have regulations, literally they have to follow. So that could be important. And these guys are important in Europe. If you're in Europe, this becomes a much more important article, I think.
Yeah.
But I can't say I'm enough of an expert in what GitHub and all the others are doing to say that it's really as unique as they claim.
Yeah. John, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I was between important and optional in this, but I think it's this whole notion of own your own intelligence, own your own development environment, being able to go in the virtual private cloud or on premise. I think it's going to be a vital part. And as we'll see later, in the Menlo Ventures article, the security issues. I mean, there's so many security and ownership issues here. So I think people are underestimating. I mean, you go back and I mean, you think about what's happening here. You're taking the cognitive work of the world, which is the highest value added work, and you're now automating it and you're trying to own it. Very much like what Monsanto did with its when it won a ridiculous argument where it could charge you for seeds that blow into your field. If your next door neighbor used Monsanto stuff and the seeds blow into your field and start growing, you owe Monsanto money, which is totally nuts. And they won an argument where the corn, the creation of corn is at least a 6 millennium long process, right? And they stick their foot in the river of change and they claim everything upstream and downstream, and they legally get paid for that. It's just baloney. And we've seen a similar thing here. The big model people are out there, they're stealing IP, they're putting it into their weights, they're claiming economic rents, and nobody's standing against them. So smart companies are going to pick their head up and say, I'm not going to expose myself to this kind of cognitive theft. And, it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's an interesting debate. Paul, where were you on this one?
I think from a rating standpoint, definitely optional. It's a product announcement. I do think it's important innovation for everything we talked about here. And boy, the code editing area is on fire. And we got to keep watching it because it's telling where it's going. But this article is optional.
Yeah. Okay. So we are going to. I was tempted important. For Europe, the cases they cite, this is that solves a number of problems for enterprises. Important, as Ankash pointed out. So I think it's important to flag. All right, let's proceed.
Okay, the next one comes from Menlo VC and talks about security for agents and agents for security.
Yeah, it's the VC type of discussion about this topic with suggestions for the startups that are at the front of the innovation. What did you think about this, John?
Yeah, I was going to rate this important. Look, they're talking their book for sure. I thought it was one of the better descriptions of the kinds of issues and kinds of attacks that are out there. Got a nice little market map if you go down farther about different folks who are in this domain. As I say, I think that we're fundamentally, think about it this way, which is that I think that you think about what's been going on with information and corporate systems and so forth. They're very much, it's almost like the IT departments were in a controlled environment, right, in a lab. As we put agentic stuff in here, we're going to be faced with all the things from the wide environment, right, and much more. It's going to be a much more fertile. If you think of a biological analogy, we're going from basically a clean room to out in a forest, right, and the number of methods of attack. I think they're smart to talk about the kind of thinking and kind of bureaucratic control systems that we have now. We're going to have to go to more organic control systems, local intelligence, replication. Just whole new ways of and I think we'll learn from biomimicry, but machines will actually come up with ways that are even different from the way biology does. But I just think that this to me is a decent market map, a decent beginning of a broader conversation of the true variety and difficulty of dealing with security in an agentic world, which I think we should be getting our inspiration from nature, not from machines and bureaucracies.
Okay, important from John. What did you think about this, Ankash?
Important for me as well, Luda. I think it's a very good primer for someone who has not been following security in AI agents or AI agents for security. So definitely important from that perspective. Yeah,
and it sets it at the front. It talks about the lack of talent. I didn't realize that there is such a difficulty finding those people who are knowledgeable in this space. I thought there is a lack, but not that big of a lack. Yeah. Okay. What did you think about this, Tim?
Yeah, I was actually almost going to argue for essential because I don't think most AI leaders have an understanding of how dangerous this stuff can be, especially when leveraged through autonomous agents.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I remember in 2007, I was talking to the health IT industry and telling them, you really got to take the security stuff seriously. And I got laughed out of the room. They said, oh, we don't have any security problems. And, you know, so I think nobody wants to deal with this because, again, it just impedes market penetration. It makes life harder. It's difficult to deal with, and it causes pain and heartache. But I think it's essential if this stuff is going to scale. And I think the risks here are much higher than the risks of AGI right now.
Oh, totally. And it escalates with every agent that you introduce right into the system. And now we're into multi-agent, multi-platforms across the databases. I mean, the number of passes where the security is compromised, it goes exponentially. Yeah, agree with you, Tim. Paul, what did you think?
Yeah, just a few notes on here in Boston. Here, CyberArk was just purchased for $25 billion. Their identity provisioning, so it kind of shows you that there's a lot of money still, obviously, in security. I think the thing I'm really reflecting on, Johnny, you know, I've been on some of the calls. You know, see, this IT department's really challenged with get more citizen development going, get more projects going, get the line happy, but still stay safe. And you know. We have one company asking us, do they really want to have everyone who creates an agent register, not register, how they keep visibility of it? And I agree with Tim. I think as an AI leader, you need to at least highlight security against your optimism to come across as a presentable leader. So essential.
They also mentioned the MCP that everybody is banking on as a secure protocol. Everything is hunky-dory, but it's not, right? It can be compromised. So it certainly, yeah. Okay, essentially it is. Let's proceed.
Okay, the next one that we have for today comes from LangChain and talks about how Boltzmann built a multi-agent system to empower creatives.
Yeah, Tim, what were your thoughts?
I was between optional and important. It's a good use case at one level. It's a big company with classic problems of decentralized organization and fragmented data and information, and a nice description of how they solve that problem. They're light on both technical details and actual returns, which makes it a little harder for me to give it the important front pocket kind of designation. But I think, you know, I could be talked into important. It's a good use case by a large company of a very challenging problem that lots of companies have.
What did you think about this, John?
Yeah,
Tim.
Yeah, we actually used to do some work for Bertelsmann. You know, I agree with Tim. It's a massively important issue. My concern is it just let me down. I was looking for, you know, something around how they did it, more on how they did it, what the impact was, and just give me anything. Give me an ROI. Give me an organization. Give me a flow chart. Give me something. So my interest was peaked at the beginning, and then, you know, totally disappointed in terms of the delivery on the case study. So I was going to give it an optional because of that, but you know, I could live with important.
Yeah, I was also optional. Ankash, optional, going optional.
Yes, Luda, optional for me. There's lack of impact here, so optional for that.
No, they talk about that from hours to seconds, but they don't crystallize it. Paul, going optional, okay?
Yep.
All right, optional it is. And the last one, Ankash.
Yes, Luda. So the last one comes from Ideogram and talks about their new offering called Character.
Yeah, let me introduce this one. So this Ideogram is a Canadian company that is in the very crowded space, text to image, image to image. And what they're introducing here is from one image, you can have a lot of variations. And they're very consistent and very great variations with very little input. So that's their differentiation, if you will, but it is minor in such a crowded space. So I am optional on this one. What did you think about this, John?
It was optional too, but I do love the fact that they took the Coldplay thing and, you know, put their character in there. It's like, which I thought was pretty funny. Anyway, yeah, I mean, yeah, optional. I think it's an interesting technology, kind of scary in terms of, you know, going down deep fakes. I do think from a visual perspective, these things are still a little bit wooden. You can, you know, they're a little too perfect or whatever, you know. So I think they still, people was the what they call it, the uncanny valley, you know, the ability to actually for a human being to sense that they were in fact machine created. But I was going to give this optional, nice product announcement, interesting thing, but I don't think that important.
Ankash, do you want to make it
Option.
important? Optional.
Optional, Luda, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Going optional. Tim, Paul. Okay. Yeah.
Optional. Everyday miracle.
Everyday miracle. Yeah, I agree. Okay. Optional it is. So we're at the end of the articles. So let's proceed to the scorecard. And Paul, John, Tim, any announcements?
On our end, Ankash, you want to give an update on the buyer's guide for the team? I know we mentioned it briefly yesterday.
Sure, Paul. So we are releasing the buyer's guide today. So it's evaluation of multiple vendors, close to 30 plus vendors in the foundation model and LLM ops space. And we have a good variety of enterprise adoption trends, vendor trends, and some really good insights for organizations looking to adopt LLMs or GenAI applications in their organization. So it will be released 5 p.m. ET today.
Yeah, kudos to Ankash and team, because there's lots of also insights on top of this vendor and trends and that you can't see anywhere else.
Yeah, and Luda, I think one thing we've done 25 product briefings with vendors, Mistral and OpenAI and others, and it's really stunning stunning's the wrong word, but it shows you how fast the moving market is, because we're spending so much time talking about trends and the vendors spend so much time in their products. So we're seeing whole pockets of the market that they aren't even aware of. So
correct.
Yeah. I think the important thing, I think what it does for the reader is 4 things. First, it analyzes adoption trends in terms of what's really happening, which I think is important to understand. Second is vendor trends, as Paul was saying, across the different vendors, you know, from large model, small model, and so forth, because you can't really get that anyplace. The third thing is some of the findings in terms of what the current issues are for implementation and some of the remedies. And the fourth thing is a set of half a dozen or so predictions that we're making for the next 6 to 12 months in terms of where the market's going. So this is, if you're trying to orient yourself in this tumultuous market that kind of feels like living in a washing machine, we can give you those four anchor points, if you will, or at least guideposts that distill the grapes of AI down into the brandy of insight.
Yeah. Great. Well, we're all looking forward to reading the final result.
Can I just,
any more announcements?
One thing I do want to highlight something Kevin said here, and this is something I think we should, you know, grab some time and maybe do a learning lab about. But this whole notion of security is a part of a greater governance problem, and I would argue, Kevin, too, an approach and a thinking. I think, you know, the old thing that Einstein said, you know, the level of thinking that got us here is not going to solve the problems that we see going forward. That's not exactly what he said, but it's kind of like that. And I do think that we need new thinking, well, a combination of new and old thinking. I think some of the original folks like Alan Kay and Tim and others who were designing, you know, the internet and the personal computer were much more organic and mathematical in their thinking. And I think that's where we're going to have to go in terms of dealing with security risks. You know, we've created kind of the homeland security bureaucracy in our approach to security, and it's not going to be enough.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Yep. Totally agree.
And John, on that, I know for different thing is interesting to me. Learn more about what was the power dynamics in the organic world, because it seems like the power dynamic exponential growth and no regulation is just going to continue to
Yeah, the
be a major factor between
Yep.
us, China, and the big tech firms, which are cranking it, and the Wall Street and everything else.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, interestingly, I think China's actually acting more capitalist than we are. We're allowing non-market forces to dominate, and through the fact that we're not enforcing antitrust, property, or rule of law. And so capitalism doesn't work if you don't enforce those things.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, we are at the top of the hour. Ankash, do you have a chart for us? But we have 2 essentials,
Yes,
1 important, and 3 optionals. So thank you all. Thank you for active participation. Kevin, Vivek, Valda, really appreciate it. Thank you, analysts. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you tomorrow.